We are live, and Ted's looking super white over there. Try to shade him a little bit here.
Yeah,
Get a
step
parasol.
off and, move some lighting. But welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds. I am Nerdarchist Ted, and today I'm joined by
Nerdarchist Dave. So, in theory, we are now streaming in live.
So
Sorry for the cough drop, folks. I'm still, like, fighting the plague here.
yeah, Saturdays have not been good for me the last few weeks either. I don't feel like I'm dying, but I've been dealing with a migraine since about 8 o'clock this morning. That was not fun.
Yeah, unfortunately. Although, I am a little proud of ourselves because we've been starting these things on time pretty regularly now.
No, Nerdarchy Standard Time anymore?
No. People don't know. People will not know when to show up.
So looks like we're going to be talking today about, gunpowder, black powder, technology.
Gunslingers.
So like there's lots of fun stuff that's, out there with third-party products and, what have you. I know that anytime you talk about, like, pushing away from that typical fantasy, there's a lot of people who like, but, there's a lot of fun stuff that you can do with it.
Yeah. And I guess, too, like, we don't want to talk about specifically, when I say gunslinger, not necessarily the gunslinger class that Mercer put out, which, I mean, I believe that was Gunslinger from Pathfinder. Before that he kind of, like, converted to 5A, which, like, I like some things of his Gunslinger, but I'm not 100% sold on it.
I enjoy it, and, we got a super chat from Jared. Thank you much.
That he asked if we were secret dragons. That was my dragon pose.
I am not a secret dragon. Actually, if you care about Zodiac at all, we're both lions. But
unless you're talking about the Chinese Zodiac, then I'm a rabbit. Pointy teeth.
I don't know what I am. I know, like, the year I'm a horse.
Yeah, that's the Chinese Zodiac.
Okay, all right. Well, then I do know.
Better than a jackass.
So true. But, to me, I think, Gunslinger could be its own class as opposed to a fighter archetype. The fighter by itself, once you remove subclasses, is pretty strong, considering it gets its own, superpower of action surge. You combine that with a high damaging weapon, like a gun, it gets really strong.
I'm just lazy. I'm like, meh, I don't need the whole class. Because, I mean, the Gunslinger, the class that he did a class for it. The part I liked the most about the class was probably the randomness of misfiring. And the part I liked the least was the grit. I found the mechanics for the Battlemaster superiority die far more interesting than the grit mechanic.
I looked down at the chat because I know there was a bidet y'all, which was a critter reference, and Percy was the gunslinger, and as you said, he made that because they were playing Pathfinder before they moved into 5th edition, when they went live on Geek and Sundry, and having watched, all of the first campaign, I thought, Percy was a very compelling character, and it was interesting to see, that class in action there. And I didn't feel at any point in time that he was overpowered in comparison to what, any of the other characters had the capacity to do. Getting the increased crit range at, some of the high damaging weapons that he could do. Yeah, every once in a while he seriously slung out damage. But as you brought up, that misfire chance, there were many times that he was just completely ineffectual when his dice were just not on his side.
You've watched most of the first season?
I watched all of it. Yeah.
Oh, you watched all of the first season?
Yeah, it's well over 400 hours.
So were there any really good mishaps?
I mean, when his gun blows up in his hands, I mean, those are, pretty typical. And there were times where it was just like, I pull out a gun, it misfires. I pull out a gun, it explodes, and I take damage. I pull out another gun, I make an attack, and
the enemies are like, don't go near that guy, he's gonna blow up.
So, like,
archers.
It was spoilers, but I mean, it was pretty bad when your dice are rolling poor. You do not want to be a gunslinger. And and I've seen those days. I mean, literally my game that I ran with the kids, and your son as well, on Monday, New Year's Eve, I rolled 18 dice and didn't roll double digits once. So like I've been there.
Impressive.
It was pretty bad. So when you've got those misfire chances, the better the gun, the bigger that misfire chance is. You're going to do more damage, and you might crit on higher numbers, but you can be like, I rolled a 5. Oh, this gun's useless for this combat.
We haven't really talked about black powder and weapons in our current campaign very much yet. Mm-hmm. It hasn't really come up. I feel like False Haven would be a place where that might happen.
Well, I figure, I mean, we're in a handful of months, we're probably going to be done your game. I have to start, plotting, planning, and prepping for my next game, which obviously I'm going to push forward into the future. And that could be something that, we begin to develop, or, we just decide, is that something that we want to have? I mean, I think that if you've got the potential for pirate vessels, that you should absolutely, have cannons, but what does it take to take the technology from cannon down to a handheld version? So
I bet there's a place we can find this out. I think someone's already done it.
No, but I mean, having the conversation of, is that something that we want for our world? Do we want to, approach that level, or do we not want something like that? Is that too far from the typical fantasy for our game, our world?
So I figured when we talk about this, we'd kind of like go through like a little bit of our evolution. Very early on, because I'm a bit older than the rest of the group, especially when we first got started. It was like me and Steve were kind of like the same age. Ryan was 16 and he's 8 years younger than me, and then you're a couple years younger than me as well. So, thank you, Planeswalker 18.
Chinese powder dish rifles work well.
Appreciate the super chat. But, in those early days, I think you guys kind of just went with what we did, and we were definitely like purists. It's like
you wanted fantasy. There was nothing that was going to be in the vein of future. Like, we strictly played D&D and we strictly played fantasy. Had anyone approach the idea of something Eberron. Oh, I want trains.
You would have been ridiculed really badly.
You would have been like, what on earth are you talking about?
We were such assholes back in those days. It would have been brutal for you. But eventually what did happen is we played so much fantasy, and we were playing every week, at least once a week, that I actually started getting burned out on it, and and I actually broke down and started introducing other stuff into the games. Mm-hmm. The very first thing I remember introducing was a dungeon that was built by gnomes. I forget what the original complex was supposed to be, but it was built by gnomes. It was kind of a dungeon-esque delve for you guys, and I totally used goblins wearing power armor. Because there was a 3rd edition book that came out from a third-party publisher, and it had like all kinds of like steam-powered stuff in it. And I remember I'm like, I guess I can use this, and started throwing that stuff in there, and that kind of like kicked things off a little bit.
Sadly, I mean, we've done so much like that. It's totally a wash. I don't remember that at all.
Well, at least I was able to create memorable moments for you to tabletop.
Oh, I mean, believe me, I've got dozens of awesome moments. But I mean, we've been playing for 25 years at this point in time together. I can't remember every single little thing. But I mean, we've played in a multitude of worlds. And let's face it. I mean, as we as gamers have evolved and done more, other things, kind of push things out. I'm going to remember, some of the bad things. I'm going to remember some of the big things. I remember my character who, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, we're all exhausted. We push on and, we get ambushed by monsters and you totally TPK us. I remember he was a swashbuckler. His name was Matoya. You know, I totally, remember his death, and it's like, oh, well, I guess that campaign's over. It's just, it's whatever jumps out at that point in time. But, when it comes to, pushing the levels of technology, you get into, things like Eberron, and you realize that you can have those kinds of, increased tech without really being robbed of the fantasy experience.
Well, because none of that's technology. It's all magic. They're all magic items essentially.
But I mean, like you wouldn't put a train in Forgotten Realms, whether it's magic or whether it's steam. It just doesn't fit. Whereas when Eberron, produces the lightning rail, I'm like, I like that. I think that's cool, and you've got the ability to, take your fantasy and be able to offer new options. Like when you ran that game on the channel, where we were on the train and we were dealing with the issues there. I thought that was a really cool adventure, and we're up on top. And it's like if you fail your check to stay on, you're gone. You're out of the adventure, because regardless of whether you survive, regardless of whether you got a flight speed, you can't possibly keep up with the train. And spoiler, thing was playing an Aarakocra, and they got pushed off. It's like, well, you're not dead, but you're done. You're click the button. You're now a spectator. And it was like, this is interesting. And, if it was anything but a one-shot, it would be like, oh, man, that really sucks.
How do we get back on the train?
How do we get the party back together? But, I didn't feel that it was any less D&D, but it was still, we were on a train.
So, Nate Rowe, if the D&D world has magic, it shouldn't be far-fetched to assume non-magic users would find ways to push the limits of technology to try and equal the playing field. See, I kind of disagree with that in the sense that I feel like it would go more of the Eberron way. Instead of, why would you try and create like new technology instead of using what already exists? So I feel like the Eberron way is how things would go if you have more magic, and you would seek to mass produce those effects.
Right. And I kind of see that as well, as magic replacing technology. I was just talking about this last night, but there's a cleric spell that it was like Eternal Flame or whatever it's called, that you create a permanent flame effect that essentially produces light without it actually burning things. You could have those things, so you've got a city that's lit up at night without it ever depleting. It's not electricity, but you've got a light source that's always there. And if you've got a caster that is able to do it regularly, and the city that can pay the costs, I think that would be an awesome thing to have as technology, quote unquote, increases,
progresses.
Yeah.
Now that being said, like Eberron, it works because what they did is they kind of introduced a lot of lower tier, lower end magic, and it's like still the higher level stuff is still fairly limited. So it's like magic is really broad, but it's not so much that it's deep where you're going to see fireballs flying all over the place. But you could, like, if you wanted to go with, magic could be a catalyst for technology, and the reason why is because they can't figure out how to harness magic and make it do those other things, make it be mass produced, where it never gets beyond the concept of anything done by magic is almost done by a craftsman. So it becomes more like a service or something only one person can do, or they can only make one at a time, and it takes a lot of time. It's not like there's a factory that can just pump it out. Where in Eberron, they kind of like worked around that and figured it out and made the factories that kind of pump it out by, like they have the forges that just create Warforge, for instance. So, what that would do is, what I could see is, people that don't use magic going, oh, how can I do something like this? And because there is no way to make the magic do the thing, then it could be like, you would go in other directions where you might start with steam powered and black powder as well. And at first it's like a competition with magic, but then like technology would start to outstrip magic because it's still limited. While there's some people that do godlike, fantastic things, there's only a certain number of people that can do that.
Right. But when you already have, I mean, we have the Warforged in our world, which I think, like, we stripped the war part off and just called them, you know, forged.
Yeah.
And they're designed for, okay, you know, we make them and they're specialized for whatever it is that they're going to do. You know, they're based out of the Underdark, or as we call the Beneath, and therefore it's, you know, slightly different. You know, but they're there, and if you've got Warforged, if you've got constructs, it's not too far of a leap to be like, oh, well, what other type of, you know, constructs or constructed things could you wind up doing? You know, you're talking about the goblins in, you know, mech armor or power armor. You could literally have like a gnomish steam suit that somebody, you know, has crafted and has that, you know, that big furnace on its back, and you could totally have you know, the misfire, or you know, oh, if it gets hit in the wrong place, the whole thing is just going to explode, and, you know, possibly a fireball effect could go off, and you could have a lot of fun with those type of things, which is a combination of, you know, magic and technology together, or is solely one or the other.
Yeah, or competing, like that you could do something with them competing, or the idea, like someone had mentioned in here, Roger Babin, the idea of a god who destroys tech advancements. You could do organizations or religions that are dead set against those kind of advancements as well. So there's definitely ways you could play with that. They could be opposing forces in the world, you know, via organizations.
Well, I mean, and that's the great thing, that as you get into these kind of discussions, like one is always going to foster the other. You know, if you've got, you know, people who are into magic, there's going to be, you know, there's going to be a religion, you know, thus a god. There's going to be, you know, people who are focused on it, but you're going to have the antithesis as well. You're going to have somebody, or, you know, a group of somebodies who are like, no, I don't like it. I want to hunt it down. I want to stop it. And depending upon, you know, the levels in your world, you can kind of, you know, sling bar that, or, you know, slider bar it and be like, okay, well, magic is really prevalent. Therefore, there's only going to be a handful of people that are against it, but it still exists. It's still out there. You know, or, well, maybe magic is a little bit less, and therefore, you know, the amount of people who really don't like it could be higher because they don't like someone having that much control, that much power.
So there is a question about a topic I rather not handle, but maybe you have something to say about.
Okay.
William Blowers, how would you handle time travel? Would you take it a Legacy of Kain-like thing where time is restricted by destiny fate and can only be changed by a MacGuffin, or what?
All right. Time travel,
Sucks.
You know, yeah, absolutely, 100% time travel sucks. If you are gonna consider dealing with this, you have to approach it carefully, or you're gonna have to approach it as some do, and that regardless of whether time travel is possible, time becomes immutable. You can go back and you can witness, but regardless of what you do, you can't really alter the outcome. And if somebody pushes the issue with me, that's the direction I tend to go. Okay, you can go back and you can attempt to change what happened, but, you know, time is going to be one of those things that somebody stronger than you, more powerful than you, insists upon, you know, neat and clean edges. And should you so desire to try and muck with it, they will muck back. And however is needed to be done, it will keep things in neat and orderly rows, so that, oh, well, you go back to change this and save person X's life. Person X is still going to die. It's just different how he died, or how they died.
Yeah, that could change it, or, yeah, it would be really hard just because of player agency, but, like, if the events unfold and the end result ends up being the same, but now it's actually caused by the players. Then you have to ask the question of, was it always going to happen that way, or did it only happen that way because the players went back in time?
That's
and that's why I would prefer not to do anything with time travel in any games.
The only time I would ever consider is if it was like a specifically created plot device by the GM where you wanted to muck with things. Okay, it's essentially its own MacGuffin. You want to be like, oh, here's this grand event, this thing happens, you need X. Well, for whatever reason, X has been removed. Either because you want to mess with the players, or the players are trying to mess with you. And now you're using this, can you go back in time and, do this stealth mission and save the thing or retrieve the thing before the good guys or bad guys, mess with it, and you can retrieve it. You put a duplicate in its place so that the time is still in order and no one is the wiser. And you have this fun session planned out to do that. That's the only time I would ever really consider going down that direction. But I'm, for the most part, against doing stuff with time. There's plenty of shows and plenty of movies and books that get into all of that, and I want none of it.
Well, and that's the thing. It's so much easier in a book or a movie, because you have one person telling the story. In a role-playing game, you got 5, 6, 7, 7 people trying to cooperatively tell the story, and no one is necessarily working together to come to that outcome. So it makes it really tough. And so, then you start having to do splintered timelines or rewrite the whole entire history of the world that you're playing in. It can be a lot of fun. And, if you're into that game, I said go for it. But it's not something I would want to play with, I don't think.
All right, so Jamster XD says, Nerdarchy, of all the campaigns you've played, which one moment do you look back on and think, that was awesome, and what was it that made it so good? Do you have anything that, specifically stands out?
Yeah, it's probably one of the stories like we've told over and over again.
So, I mean, different that have stood out to me, as much as I respect the player and GM that Ryan has become. I love, claiming that, we won D&D. I love the moments where, the dice have severely altered the outcome, when we banished the demon and when you failed the saving throw with the Hydra. I love moments where, campaigns have wrapped up and there's only been a handful that I've been a part of, when, Johnny's game that I was a part of, we played in college where I had my human wizard who wound up, the end result was like he was becoming the bad guy, which I thought was awesome. I love the moments, that we had in my Narcitus game, actually wrapping up a full, 20th level story arc. Those were great things.
Wait, in Scott's game, which is more recent, it's on the channel someplace. I won't say what happened, only because if people decide they want to go watch it, you can. It's Nerdarchy Saves the World, and it's a D&D modern game, which kind of dovetails into what we're talking about anyway, which, there's like a series of events that happen that totally unraveled the next 4 sessions that Scott had planned and ended the game early, in a good way for us. So that was really cool when you have things that happen like that, just because the dice really just align the right way. And speaking of adding technology to D&D, that game was an eye opener as far as the stuff that was being done in the game with technology, because it was a modern day game. Where one, our spellcasters are like, I would rather use grenades and an AK-47 than cast spells. But then they were also doing weird things with their technology. Well, my brother Ryan was doing weird things with their technology. He basically, I don't remember if it was the Siri personality was in love with him, or if he was in love with the Siri personality. But it was like his warlock patron or a pack of chains. No, I guess it wasn't. I guess the technology was the patron, and then he had like a pack of chains boon or something, and had a mobile device with the Siri personality, and one of them was in love with the other. But the ways that he was able to just use things that you would take for granted, just like GPS, simple GPS, having access to that, and having a sentient being that could direct that was like a huge thing in that campaign.
Absolutely. And the all of the modern stuff that we played in that game was a lot of fun. And grenades and all the stuff out of the DMG are significantly more powerful than what characters might be able to do, especially at low levels. So if you can get access to that stuff, it's a lot of fun. But it becomes a power balance type of thing.
A lot of people railing against time travel, which I agree with. It's just really hard, and you kind of have to just like be really into it in order to even bother trying for it. So do you have any thoughts, Ted, on what you want to do with technology and the Griffingaff world we've been doing, Chimes of Discordia?
Well, I mean, it's not something that I've put a lot of thought into, but looking into it, I wouldn't be opposed to looking at some of the smaller weapons in the DMG or in the supplement that Matt Mercer came out with, and offering a gunslinger class to my players in the next game. If that's something that people had interest in, I wouldn't want to push people away. But I would be much more inclined to offer some of the bigger stuff that the Eberron offers. I mean, if we've got Warforged, why can't we have a train system? Why can't we have some kind of magicking message system? I know in the game you're running, we met the Clockwork Kingdom, and we started coming up with the clockwork birds that could deliver messages. Well, what happens if we added a little bit more magic and allowed them to travel much faster, and opened up serious communication policy, not policies, but prospects, either direct magic, similar to the message spell via some kind of device, or just the birds that could travel significantly faster than what they can now. I would be really happy to have something like that happen. And like, what would that mean?
So we did a video about the Gnomes of Trinemit. That was kind of like a project from Ryan, where they harnessed the Ramarazes and used the Ramarazes to tunnel in the tundra, and then they have them pulling behind them like carts, almost like a subway. So we do kind of have that, although it's not really technology based as much as it is, with the use of magical creatures, you're able to do things like that. So they like kind of like that stuff is kind of cool, and it's like trying to introduce it in a way that's interesting and not isn't already being done. Like our Fasthaven is very steam driven, but that's because Fasthaven is powered by a lot of subterranean fires that are burning. So they have this resource. So there's a lot of like hot springs and stuff. But again, that's also very unnatural, because what we did in Fasthaven is in the Beneath, in our Underdark there, a portion of hell has kind of been transfixed or I don't know what the word would be.
Essentially a permanent link, a permanent portal. So like the fires of hell are literally pouring through into the prime material plane. Yeah,
just a piece of hell was basically taken from hell and relocated to this underground world. And the devils love it, because it's like, oh, there's all these mortals above we get to make deals with and steal their souls. And it's just became this, like, it's our like Las Vegas, really. But it's located in the tundra. in this basin that's just like superheated, so the temperatures aren't bad for people to hang out with. They have all this steam stuff, so they're using it. So they but it's also like I kind of envision it like almost like a dirty London kind of from the turn of the century, where it's the industries just coming on board, and that's what's going on there, and they're utilizing it, and then what the demons do below the surface is, or the devils do below the surface is, they made a mock city of Frosthaven, and they kind of like live out lives like the people above would, and occasionally people will go down there and gamble and get warlock packs and cool things like that.
Absolutely. For me, another thing that I was looking at doing to kind of supplement the style of game that we have, so that you can, take out some of the smaller exploratory things that we do and get to the plot faster. I was looking at like what would it take in our world to have in any place of the world that would be considered like major metropolitan, to have permanent transportation circles. So like if you wanted to go from Griffin Gaff to Dralic or Falstaven, like you could pay someone and get teleported from one circle to the next, and then you could have anywhere that should you so desire to elevate its status. Well, in order to do so, it would need to have a permanent circle placed, which might require permits, it might require a significant gold cost, it might require finding and hiring a permanent mage to handle the magics of operating again the circle. That's something that I would like to have happen, so that's not dependent upon the player's spell slots, but upon an NPC, and thus a gold cost involved.
So I guess the only issue with that is when it gets introduced, what's the gold cost, and it circumnavigates any kind of like wilderness travel, unless you don't want that in your game, and it's a good way to boot it.
Well, I mean, and that's one of the things that I was looking at. I mean, obviously, if you're trying to get from major spot to major spot, to further the plot, that's an easy way to do it. If it's dependent upon an NPC wizard who has access, is he out of spells for the day? Do the players have the gold cost, and are they willing to spend it? Each of these things are something that, as the GM, you have a little bit of control over. And then if you want to, I want to, send the players to this dungeon. Well, if the dungeon isn't, in close proximity to one of these things, well, then you still have the capacity to still have that wilderness exploration, to be involved. But as our games tend to have, less of those random encounters and the random travels, it would still have those things when you want them.
So Roger Babin, the problem with teleport circles is it opens a big vulnerability in the city defense.
Well, that then leads things to new and interesting plot elements. How quickly can you send multiple things through? How much does it require permits and control and inspections and whatever? So
the bureaucracy of running teleportation circles.
I mean, again, it goes into how much you want to, nitty gritty, those details. But as I look at them, like I want those kind of things. I think it would be a lot more fun of, okay, well, I want to go from here to there. Having played, the higher level games, and it's like, I want to be in Dralic right now. Okay, well, the players all have teleport, or one of the players has teleport, and there's enough people, off you go. I don't have control over that. So to me, having played the higher end, it's not a problem for me because I've already been there, already done that. It's a matter of, all right, I want to be able to allow that possibly at lower levels, but have it controlled by, again, those components.
So JP Morris has a question, a little bit on a different topic, but that's okay. We can jump into this. Got any tips for getting people to move around in combat? I adore tactical combat, but recently We've been playing some boring static slugfest, and I'm finding myself very bored at the table. So for this, it's very depending on whether you are the GM or whether you're the player. If you're the player, it's a little bit harder. If you're the GM, it's actually a lot easier. If you're the GM, the idea is you just need to create reasons for the players to move around. Is there an advantage to moving around? If there's no difference between me just sitting here and hitting Ted with my weapon or me moving and hitting Ted with my weapon, which could possibly draw an attack of opportunity, there's absolutely no reason for me to move. You have to create opportunities. Like, is there difficult terrain? Is there obstacles that you can put in their way? Can you find cover somehow if you move into a position? Can you use the terrain and what's around you as a weapon? Can you push your enemy into something that's a hazard? Can they do the same to you? So with this,
do you offer as the GM, any kind of flanking bonus? I know some GMs like if you can draw a line, between two players and the middle of the enemy's base is there, then it might confer, either a static bonus or advantage on the roll. I know in one of the games that I played, away from the Nerdarchy table, there were two players who made their characters together. They trained, they fought together. They always delayed their, whoever rolled higher always delayed their initiative so that they went at the same time, and they were always trying to get a flank whenever possible. And the DM was like, oh, I'll totally allow, if you guys do this all the time, you guys will attack with advantage. Okay, all right, that's a cool thing. So they would be moving in concert, and it was fun, it was interesting, and mechanically it offered an advantage. If your GM offers up either inspiration or some kind of mechanical advantage, if you are moving tactically or just being descriptive in what you're doing, that encourages player agency, and that encourages more immersion in the game itself.
Risk and reward is another thing that I would consider as well. Does your player describe something cool that they want to try and do? New players do this all the time. It's usually something the game can't handle. But occasionally they'll do it in a way that works. If they're like, I want to use my glaive and pole vault at them and drop kick them, well, really that's just a shove attack, and that's going to be kind of boring. So what I've done is like, okay, make an attack roll. If you hit, you can then make an athletics check. If you beat them, then you're going to do a little bit of damage and knock them prone for your next attack. Normally, you wouldn't do any damage because that's just how the grapple works. Or if you're like, hey, I want to jump down from the top of this roof that's 3 stories high onto them. I'm like, okay, but you're probably going to take some of the damage. If you make a good athletics check, acrobatics check, maybe I'll have you take less of the damage, and you can do extra damage to the opponent. As a player, some things you can do. You can use, like I said, you can use the trip and shove maneuvers. Use your spells to create hazards on the battlefield so that the other players will be enticed to use. But really, it just comes down to giving incentives to do stuff. And if you're the GM, you can have a lot of fun with this, because one of the things you can do is have the NPCs or the monsters do this stuff. And they'll be like, oh my God, I didn't realize I could do that. Like, for instance, I don't know, if they're fighting in a kitchen in a city, right? There's pots, there's pans all over the place, tons of improvised weapons, there's knives, maybe there's several boiling kettles all over the place. And one of the villains, or one of the players, is like, I want to grab that boiling kettle and by the handle and try and dump it on the player, right? So, maybe you allow them to do splash damage and attack one opponent at a time if they get it off. But it's really just creating these narrative situations in the game and allowing your players to interact with them. And if they choose not to, well, have your monsters and your villains interact with them, and kind of like, you can kind of show them, kind of teach them.
As Dave says, environment is important. In the material that I was running in the RPG Crate game last night, the monster is like supposed to be like, do a grapple and be able to shove off the mountainside. And I'm like, they're really high up. I don't want to just auto kill, but maybe you're fighting on a rooftop that's 30, 40 feet up, and the characters could handle falling damage of 3 or 4 die 6. So those could be fun. I know in the game that Nerder Doug ran at Concoction last year, we were doing stuff and we were really high up, and I had to jump to kind of get to where the bad guy was, and I failed my roll. I took 15 die 6 falling damage. That was not fun because I failed my roll. So your environment is going to play heavily into what's going on. So if you describe a really cool environment and somebody wants to do something with it, let them and have fun with it, whether you're the player, whether the GM. Try stuff. Sometimes even a failure at something is going to wind up being an awesome story.
Well, that kind of makes me thinking too, like the earlier topic of technology, gunslingers and black powder. What if you're in a fight in a warehouse full of black powder? All kinds of interesting things can happen and go wrong there, especially if you have a mage in the party.
Yeah, especially if it's a wild mage.
So we're like 3/4 of the way through this thing.
2/3.
2/3, and you've got a stack of stuff over there, Ted.
I do. We have to announce our monthly giveaway. We have to announce our monthly game with the fans. So do we want to dive right into that?
Yeah, let's start with the monthly giveaway. So this is the stuff that we're giving away at the first, right?
All right. So we do a giveaway that isn't sponsored by or supported by YouTube or Patreon or any of that kind of stuff.
Just by those who donate this stuff for us to give away.
Absolutely. So the way you get involved in this is if you are a Patreon supporter of any amount, dollar automatically gains you an entry. Otherwise, if you want to get in on it, you can go to our website. There's a contest, section. You can download, print out, and mail in the form to our P.O. box. All of that is up on the website. I combine, those who sent it in manually and those who are on our Patreon together, pull the random number generator, and this month's winner, or this month's stuff that we're giving away, we've got the Trap Compendium by 2C Gaming, as well as the stack of cinematic environs by Critical Hit Publishing. We are giving away Aquatic Depths, Blasted Lands, Aerial Reaches, Desert Wastes, Mountains, and Arctic Lands. All of this, as well as some Beardspiration tokens, because I'm giving these away until they're gone. We've got a handful of months left, but we're giving it away. And that is going to go to Ryan Libert. I'm not certain how to pronounce your last name, but I will email you, this afternoon or tomorrow, and we'll, get your address and send that out to you. But last month, we were going to give away, 2 packages of things, and the non-D&D bundle, I never got a reply on. So we still have, this like $100 or, even more stack of stuff that we didn't give away. So we have the Beardspiration tokens, Bill Webb's deck of dirty tricks. For Pathfinder, we've got the Tome of Horrors, for Unrighteous Villains, Fields of Blood, and from Metal Weave Games, the Atlas Anomalia to give away. This is quite a little bundle, and our winner didn't select it. So how do we want to give this away, Dave?
Okay, so we're going to just actually randomly select one of you guys or gals. As long as you've been commenting in the chat, you are eligible, because we're just going to randomly pick someone from there. And I would like to say, though, most of those are Pathfinder, but the Anomalia has a 5e PDF that goes along with it, if I'm not mistaken.
That is true.
So, and it's also a really fantastic art in it by Sarah Dollinger. So whether you want to use it for your game or not, it will look great on your shelf.
Absolutely. And some of if you're not a Pathfinder player, I know some of the stuff could be pseudo easily converted to 5e. I know I've used stuff out of, Pathfinder monster manuals, either as inspiration or as a, how can I convert this for my game? So definitely good gets.
So yeah, Frog God Games is one of the go-to third-party publishers that we wholeheartedly endorse. Frog God Games, Nord Games, as well as Kobold Press. I think they're like the holy trinity for us. There's a lot of other good ones as well, but like those are always top tier.
But three hardcover books and a softcover manual. This by itself is well over $100. Plus you throw in the deck of cards as well. It's a nice little score. So go ahead and begin commenting at some point in time. Dave will scroll through, point to somebody at random, and
Give stuff away.
We'll ask you to email into us. Do we want them to send it to?
They can just send it to the nerdarchy@gmail.com.
All right, so
keep it really simple and on brand.
Awesome. So while you guys and gals are doing your commenting, we can.
I did. Someone did mention, so I'll just say we do ship worldwide. We just pray it's not one of the more expensive places.
What do we got so far? UK, Australia, and Japan, I think are our, not that we won't ship them there, but I believe those are our
the more expensive places.
the top tier to ship to.
We begrudgingly ship to you folks.
We love all the Nerdarchy fans that are out there, and it is just we got to pay more.
Yeah, some of them are a bit more economical than others. Yeah, so just make sure you comment. We're going to select one of those before we get out of here. And then, like Ted said, just email us at nerdarchy@gmail.com. The other one that we just showed is the winner from last month, essentially. And next month we'll be giving away something again. We always
we've got a stack of stuff here. I was fortunate enough to have a conversation with 2C Gaming, and he's like, "Here, have stuff."
I would like to point out in our Kickstarter section, there's several Kickstarters going on. Two of them which are Nerdarchy sponsors, so I highly recommend you go check them out. Not only that, they're just really good Kickstarters. There's Easy Roller Dice, and they've got their metal dice of ancient dragons, which look fantastic. I keep forgetting to bring my set with me. I used them when I ran for your nephew.
I need to have those. So that's gonna happen.
They're nice, and the Treacherous Traps by Nord Games is going on right now.
And that's another thing that I'm gonna have to back. I need a copy of that because I think as a GM that's one of my weaker points. Yeah. And having some of the stuff. I mean, if you haven't checked out that Kickstarter, highly recommend you do so because some of the options that they have in there are just drool worthy.
So Caro wants to know if we can do a Excalibur build. Perhaps we'll do that in the near future. We could definitely maybe work something out.
An Excalibur build, like. Are we talking about like Knights of Camelot?
I was thinking the sword and make the sword Excalibur.
Okay.
Or are you talking about the group of mutants Excalibur?
Well, we did a Nightcrawler.
We did do it. We did do a Nightcrawler.
So
was it to do Lockheed next?
Captain Britain,
maybe, or Megan, but it's going way back.
Excalibur, because of my love for Nightcrawler, Excalibur was one of the titles I read. So
that was one of the few X titles I did not read. I'm bad on that one.
It wasn't the best, but I mean, my love of Nightcrawler was high. I mean, him and Wolverine were my tops back when I heavily read comic books. I mean, so like X2 was one of my favorite X movies just because Nightcrawler made a significant appearance in that movie.
Yeah, maybe we should have Doug do Excalibur. It's confirmed they want the sword. He did an article on 2 swords already, so what's one more? He's already an expert. So I have to announce these people that are going to possibly be playing in a game with me as well. Is that correct?
So do you want me to read? Do you want to read?
Let me butcher their names, please. I apologize in advance. January 27th at 2 p.m.
Eastern Standard Time.
Is that the right date? Is that a 7 or a 9, man?
That's 2-7.
Okay.
My handwriting's just as bad as your you're reading, so.
Yeah, well, my handwriting is terrible too. So I'm going to list off. We got 10 players. The first 5 to get back to me will be the ones that'll be in the game. I'll send out an email over the next day or two. Usually when the RSVP the week before, so then I know we have 5 players. And also, we've been doing our fan games offline. So we do them via Zoom, which you can download for free. It's a great application. But then we haven't been recording them, so it's just me and some fans hanging out playing some D&D or Ted.
I mean, once we get the sub channel of Nerdarchy gameplays up, we might decide to go back and start streaming them. But for the time being, until we do that, they are just totally off air, so that there's no pressure, no one who wants to I don't want to be on air. I know there's some people who have declined the game because they didn't want to be streamed. So
happens. So our players are Simon Grossman, Nathaniel Took, Martin A. Helen? I don't know. That one's odd because it's got like dots in it for some reason. Jim Smith, Lorenzo Rivagalia, Jeremy Palmer, Michael Hubbard, Aaron Bernard, Eli Bates, and James Pisarbiski. There should be more vowels in between there somewhere. I will be sending email out to folks over either today or tomorrow. So we'll get you guys all lined up and play some D&D. Usually sessions are about 3 hours. Yeah. So good times.
So speaking of, gameplays, if you happen to enjoy watching gameplays and you would like to see yours truly as a player using one of our character builds or pseudo character builds that we did here on the channel, over on Mini Terrain Domain, starting this Thursday in a weekly game, I will be a player in Jake's game. It is now being rebranded as the Dawnbringers game. The players who have already been in the game,
they all brought Dawn, and now where did they take Dawn to?
They decided they've got a group name, and it's Dawnbringers. We will be playing the Forge of Fury. They have completed the Sunless Citadel, and it was supposed to be a mini campaign. But because they decided that, they're having a lot of fun, that the players are all coming back, I'm coming in as player number 5, but it is going to be V from the Crafting Muse, Scotty from the DM's Craft, Jeremy from the Erasmus Expedition, and Megan from Dice on Ice, as well as myself as players, and again, Jake from Mini Terrain Domain is the DM. We're going to be doing Forge of Fury. It's going to be 5th level game starting this Thursday night over on Twitch.
All right, feel free anytime. You give me a... All right, who do we got? Nope. You can't win, Doug. Sorry. Landed smack dab on a Doug Vahovic.
All right, now.
You just said now? All right. We got TNT Trailblazer.
All right, so send us an email, nerdarchy@gmail.com, for, the awesome stack that I have previously mentioned, including the cool Beardspiration tokens that were, created by the awesome people over at Dungeon Crate.
Yes, and hopefully you're still in the chat. So TNT Trailblazer, email us at nerdarchy@gmail.com, and we will send you stuff in the mail, because that's what we do sometimes.
Because, at some point in time, this stack is leaving this house, and it's got to go to somebody.
It's got to go to somebody. But not you, Doug.
We love you, Doug. Thank you for all your hard work.
Doug is a tried and true D&D guy anyway. Plus, companies just send him tons of free stuff now anyway. They've seen his awesome website and editing capabilities. So
much more so than the two of us of monkeys on typewriters.
Pretty much. So after this wraps up, we're going to be doing the Nerdarchy after show. We're going into overtime.
And doing it live.
And that's where we are taking questions from patrons, GM 911s, and that video, it might be 5 minutes, it might be an hour, or we don't really know. What happens is once we finish up this, we go and post the link over on the Nerdarchy Patreon, so you have to go over there, log in, and click the link. It'll be scheduled for 3:30, but we'll start way before then, more than likely. Just so that it has the counter and it says it's something's going to be happening. Just makes it easier for us.
What pledge level do they have to be at to get access on that?
So that is the $3 level. The last two we put up there at any level. Just go check them out. So if you happen to be a patron, to see what we're doing over there. And we might actually get into some more specialized stuff later on. And eventually we're probably going to start doing some Patreon-only Nerdarchy videos that are kind of like the normal videos that we do, but we're going to put them over there.
You know, we really enjoy doing a lot of the creative stuff, and I know that, you know, some of the tried and true Nerdarchy fans really love that, but, you know, they don't always get the most love. So those are the kind of things that we have the capacity that as we're testing out, you know, what kind of, you know, Patreon content can we do to really support those who love our take on things. That's a way for us to do that kind of stuff without it actually, you know, being out there for everyone to see on the channel.
Yeah, one of the weird things we learned as content creators is the more creative the video we do, the less appeal it has. But there's always been like a very loyal and faithful small group that really enjoys those videos. So, but they just kind of tank the YouTube algorithm for us, so, you know, like, which overall can hurt the channel.
So whether we're making magic items, whether we're making monsters, whether we're answering, you know, specific GM 911 type questions, like, we love them. I know there's a, you know, huge fan base that loves them, but it doesn't do, as Dave says, you know, great overall. So those are the kind of things that we have the capacity to do as, you know, Patreon only videos.
Absolutely. So with that, we're going to pop on out of here and we're going to start setting up the after show so folks can go over to the Patreon. If you're not a patron, you can sign up to be a patron. That'll also give you access to the other posts that we have over there that are Patreon only, some of which are rewards as well. We got another reward. What is it? The Frost King going out next week. We'll be putting that up on the Patreon. The preview's over there, so you can go check it out. We're really excited about that. Megan R. Miller is the writer on that one. She took one of our videos where we talked about basically Krenschfer's Belt, which is our Arctic region. And we talked about like frost giants and Viking-esque hobgoblins and some other things. And then she took all of that stuff and made it into something that you guys can actually put right in your game. There's a patron warlock pack over there. There's magic items. There's NPCs. There's monsters. There's like a mini adventure. Yeah, she hits it out of the park every time we send something to her to do. We're really proud of the work that she puts in on those products.
And, you know, since we're talking about Megan, she has a new book that's going to be coming out very, very soon over on Amazon. So if you do look for Megan R. Miller, the R is super important on the Amazon search, because if you don't put the R, you will not find her stuff. But she is a great author, and, you know, if you want to help support her, that's definitely a way to do it.
Yeah, I just saw the other day that she had put out a call to her beta testers, and she was looking for, I guess, the finishing touches for her latest project.
Yep.
Awesome.
And like I said, you know, she said last night that it's going to be coming out real soon. So, you know, I'm like, all right, keep me in the loop, because I told her last night, like, I'm going to buy a copy. I'm going to mail it to you to autograph. So.
Yeah, she is super creative. She's a great writer. I've only played in one session with her as the GM, but I want to say hands down, she's one of the best DMs that I've played with.
Yeah, I would love to, you know, get in a regular game with her as the GM, because it was super cool to hang out with her at Concoction and, you know, have her writing her notes. And was it Elven or Dwarven that she was writing in?
I don't know. She was writing it in rune script.
Yeah, so it was Dwarven.
Because, well, no, it might be real world rune script.
That's true. That's true.
Because Josh, her husband now, but fiance at the time, was sitting next to her, and she didn't want him to peek at her notes. So she's like, he can figure it out, but he won't be able to glance at it and figure it out.
Yeah, he has to sit and translate, not just read it. But it was definitely cool, and she ran a really cool game. So I would love to, you know, either have that campaign pick back up or, you know, have something else. So I gotta, you know, at some point in time make that happen.
Yeah, I was super impressed with that. I barely English, and she's like writing in a some long dead language or something. But with that, thanks everyone. Head over to the Patreon to check out the after show. It will be up momentarily. Until next time,
stay nerdy.